Hello guys, so today we'll be modeling parts from a motocross because one of you requested that in the comments last time. So you can see here I have my default file, and then we're gonna start with setting up our modifiers. So I'll just select the cube, and contrary to the tradition, I won't delete it. I will just go to the modifiers, add the mirror modifier. Actually, in this case, because we'll be modeling just one part and it's asymmetrical, we're not gonna need a mirror modifier. But we will need a subdivision surface, so to add that I'll do Ctrl 2. And then we'll need a solidify, which is under generate. Then we'll need a shrinkwrap modifier under deform. So this is the order that we'll need. For now, don't worry, the shrinkwrap will be red because it's not active, it's not projecting onto anything. But we'll need the subdivision, the shrinkwrap, and the solidify. And one last modifier I was about to forget is the bevel modifier. So this one will be our first modifier. If on your side you use a mirror, put the mirror above the bevel. Now here I'll slide the segments to 2, set it to weight. That way we control where we want the bevels to be, like so. Perfect. Now here I'll just unwrap this little sub menu under the advanced of the subdivision surface, and then I'll change boundary smooth to keep corners. And let me show you what that does. If I delete this, you can see we have a perfectly sharp corner instead of it rounding off. So that's perfect. And let me just check on the rim, and 3 millimeters should be about right. Okay. Now we're ready to start modeling this panel. So just before we start modeling, I think it's important to explain kind of the game plan for making this part. The one we'll be making is this one here, the white block. So everything, including this part and this part, as well as all the little details. And this is where the shrink wrap will become very important and very useful. But how we're gonna start is making this in one block without the cut line, without the grab handle, without the little detail here, and we'll add them later on. Now, you can see that this is pretty much a flat surface. Of course, it has a slight bend around this area, but we'll start by kind of tracing the outline of this surface. Let me draw. I think it's going to be a bit easier. So you can see this. We'll make it, and I think I don't even care about this, because this is a sharp corner, and it will require us to kind of add loop cuts to tighten it, and maybe this will create problems later on. So I think I'll just make this surface kind of like this in the beginning. So cut it straight here. And then later on we'll need to cut out this part. But you can make it however you want. Why I'm making this flat surface before, and well, it's not actually flat, it probably has a little bend here. If we look here, it seems to go up. But it's because it's kind of the main surface, everything connects to it. So if we start with the right amount of vertices on this one, then it will be very easy to kind of fill out the rest, to model from it. So I'll just start with this, and then I'll connect the rest after creating the outline. So this is the first step, and yeah, let's make that. Actually, yeah, let me show you kind of what the topology will look like. So we'll have a loop that will follow like this, like we said. And now here we'll have a bend. Of course, our loop will go like this, then like this, like this. There you go. So this is kind of the simple look. Of course, maybe it's not going to look like that perfectly, but we want a loop that will kind of follow the outline. Over here, we'll need a loop that follows very tightly over here to get the very sharp line over here that we have all around the surface. And I'm sure it's not very clear right now because all those wobbly lines, but don't worry, we'll make it in no time. Alright, let's start. So let's jump in edit mode. I'll select everything. I'll just put the gizmo here. It helps me to see where the rotation center is and my active point. I'll just switch it to bounding box, and then I'll rotate everything on the y-axis by 90 degrees, then numpad 3 for side view, and we'll start modeling. So I like to start with a single vertex, so I'll just put it here. And since I'm not modeling the whole motorcycle, I just want to show you how I would model this part. I'm not going to be using any kind of blueprint for this. I'm just using the image on my second monitor. You can find the same per file that I'm using in the description below. So I'll just select my vertex, then I'll extrude it once over here at an angle, slight angle, just like that. Then once again over here, once again here, and then here. Now we need to sharpen those corners, just so we get a bit closer to the reference. And before I do that, let's add one over here and one over there. And I'm going to connect those two. And the reason is very simple is because there is a bend on this part here. So starting at this line and going to the right, it has kind of a slight curvature. So by bending it here, precisely where I want it, then I can bend it and then we'll be able to get the exact shape. So we need another one here. Let me move those two a bit closer over there. We'll need another vertex here. This one, I'm just going to slide it pressing G twice. Whenever you see a yellow line and kind of a vertex sliding, it's because I pressed G twice. And this allows you to slide it onto an edge. And if you press C while doing that, you can kind of prolongate that slide. Yeah, then we'll do the same thing at the bottom. And you can see I'm trying to add vertices on the same side. Basically, if I added one on kind of this edge to tighten the corner, I would have done the same here. That way I could connect those two together. But in this case, I added them on the right side over here. So we'll just need to do the same for this. Okay, so now it's pretty basic shape, but this gets the job done. Of course, these will need to be tightened, don't worry. And because it bugs me whenever I see kind of rounded edges, I'm not even going to connect them. I know they're going to be connected, so I'm not going to bother with them for now. Okay. So what we're going to do now is start filling up this shape here. And to do that correctly, we'll need a vertex here. That way it allows me to add some geometry going along that bend, and then another loop. Perfect. So you can see it's flat for this section. If it's not for you, SX0, where it should be flat. And then this allows me to add 1, 2 loops. Perfect. And now you can see this is sharp, but don't worry, it will not be sharp as soon as we connect it to something. Let me show you. There you go. So for now, this is okay. But however, if you remember, I talked about creating a loop, kind of a protective loop all around that to get a sharp edge. So what I'm gonna do is press I to inset. This might be too big of an inset. I just want it to be quite small. And then I'll delete those two. And then selecting all the vertices except the extremities one, I'll press G twice and slide them just to kind of, actually, I just wanted to make all of this straight. Because it's at an angle, there's a tool for that. It's called Loop Tools. It's an extension in Blender. It's fairly easy to install. It's free, it's built in. So select the vertices once Loop Tool is installed, right click, and under that menu, we'll press G stretch. Now you can see it spaced them out evenly, and that's fine. Sometimes that's what you want. But in this case, I just want to spread it. But perfectly flat now. All right. Okay, now let's tackle kind of the overall shape. So I'll select the corner vertex here. I'll extrude it, trying to kind of follow this line. So they're kind of in line here in this case. Let me just move it over here. Okay. Now I want to trace the outline of my part with as few vertices as possible. So I'll add it about here, just to kind of create this diagonal. Oh, perfect. And now extrude it over here and make sure that it's get further away from the trapezoidal shape that we created before. Okay, so this adds a curvature to it. So I'm going to add 2 loops, and then what I'll be doing is actually select this vertices. I made my pivot to active element. You can press, I'm not even sure what it's called. It's like the little apostrophe to change your pivot type. That's the keyboard shortcut. If you don't want to use it, just go on the top here. And so I made my pivot point to this vertex here because I want to make everything flat according to this vertex, if that makes sense. You'll see in a second. I'll press SX0 and you can see now everything is flat, but only these vertices have moved to match this one. Okay, perfect. However, I think, yeah, this is normal, that it should be lower. However, I want a slight bend into it. Now these should be lower as well, so I'll just move them back slightly. Okay, perfect. And now when you look at the images, you can see that all the light shines on this edge. So this means that it's the one that kind of sticks out the most in this case. So everything above this point will start to go back in. So I'll just extrude that vertex again. Actually, it seems to have kind of a slight break in the curvature, but I might just be going crazy. So I'll just then move it inward. Now I'll leave this alone for now, and I'll start over on this side. So selecting this corner, I'll extrude it just a tiny bit. Actually, that might be a little bit too much. And let's connect those to see what it looks like. And that's fine. However, let me just slide it a bit further out. Now, you can see that I used a slide here instead of just moving it manually. It's because the slide will kind of continue the direction, the vector that it had. So if it was flat, then it would have moved it only on one axis. But in this case, if I slide, it's going in the same direction, which is what I want. Okay. This one will need to be moved though. Okay, awesome. And now on the real part, it has kind of this little dent here. And I'm trying to see if it affects the shape or if it's just cut out. If it affects the shape, for example, if this makes it so that it's a bit more bulging here, and then it goes flatter over here, then we'll need to model it. But if it doesn't affect the shape, if it's just a cutout, then we don't need to model it. We'll take care of it with in the final panels once our base mesh is done, because this is what we're making. We're making the base mesh. In this case, I'm really having a hard time kind of. Okay. I think for the sake of this video, I'm going to leave it out and make it in the base mesh. Kind of just ignore it. So I'm going to add a loop here and just connect those two together. And then we'll need to connect those two here. The reason I'm doing it that way and not kind of in this direction vertically is just because I want to have a loop that follows this edge, because like we said, it's the point that sticks out the furthest, and so that way I want kind of a clean geometry around it to create a clear shape. And if I added vertical one, it would not have been as nice, I think. For this is a bit up to you. I like it this way. And we'll need another loop over here. Actually, let's dissolve that. Just like we did a loop like this for the inside, we will need one for the outside as well. So I'm going to add a loop here, add the loop here, fill that in, add that. Here, we could just connect that together, but what I like to do sometimes is just dissolve this loop, create the face, and then add it back. That way, it kind of guarantees me that this is perfectly straight, this is perfectly straight and aligned, and I'm not kind of playing with any vertices around here. Now, you can only do this when your loop as kind of a tightening function. Here, its only purpose is to tighten this corner to make it a bit sharper and not as sloppy. So I can do this. Now for the bottom, quite easy. I have 1, 2, 3 vertices, so I'll add 3. And now, yeah, it's perfectly fine because we set it to keep corners, so that's okay. We'll just make it round in our final panel. So here you can see I filled out everything. Now I'm not actually sure that it should look like this with the band. Let's see how it looks on the reference. Yeah, it seems to go... Yeah, it seems to become more like a shadow. It's definitely rounding off at the base though. Okay, let's try a little something. I've not used this tool often, but I think in this case it could be a good idea to take it. So I'm just deleting everything, kind of rebuilding this area in more simple geometry. I'll dissolve this loop, and now I'm still deciding if I want it to be perfectly flat in this area or if there is a slight bend. I think there should be a slight one. So I'll just move it inward, then I'll select everything, and then we'll do loop tool, G-stretch again. And yeah, what I'll do actually, as you can see, it's perfectly flat on the y-axis, like if I go in the front view, but with this one we gave it a slight angle, I think, around here. So let me just rotate it, and again, my pivot to active element, that way it's only on this vertex that's pivoting. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's see if I like the look. So I'm rebuilding this area really quickly. This loop we don't need anymore. Okay. So this is okay. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't really love it anymore. A lot. I'm not even sure what I'm saying anymore. So I just dissolved this loop because I want to move that outward. And then I want to move that out. Actually, yeah, we'll need to leave this one for now. And basically I just want to make this transition a little bit smoother. I thought that it was a bit too sharp, and by moving this one out, it did the trick. Now I'm not going to move this one because then you see, like, the bend starts much further and we won't have that clear break that we want. Okay, so we have our protective loop set up. Now, to finish filling this area, we need to add the loop at the top, just so we can connect everything together. And now you can see here we have an issue. And yeah, okay, I think I just... it's because the bend starts here. I think it would look better if the bend connected those two together though. It's not very pretty. Let me check on the reference. Maybe we'll make a creative decision and just decide that the bend would be better off elsewhere. Actually, because we moved this one out, I think we can just select this and select this and then G-stretch. And now, because I'm using G-stretch a lot, I'm going to press right click to the G-stretch function instead of left click, and then I'll assign to quick favorite. That way when I press Q on my keyboard, you can see it opens the quick favorite menu and my favorite functions are here. Okay, nice. So you can see we have this line that we wanted to create the sharp corner. We have this transition. It might still be a little bit rough. I might kind of stick out this one a little bit more. And I also think that our break is a bit too intense. On the reference, you don't see that much of it. So I think I'll just mellow it out a bit more. Also, we need to round off this corner. Let's do that. It's going to be pretty easy. Okay, so first step. Let me dissolve this because we don't really need it. Yeah, I said the bend was not. So I'm adding back the loop, then press G twice. Wait, not F. G twice, and then E to kind of force it to align on one side, and then F to flip the side, because I want it to stick on this one. So GGE and F again. And this allows me to kind of control the band amount. Now let's shade that smooth, and I'm going to add a weighted normal modifier. True, they changed its place. And this one, same thing, I'm using it on almost all my meshes, so I add it to my quick favorite. Perfect. Now you can see it fixed a lot of issues. Now I'm really having a hard time deciding if I want my bend to continue further out. Now you can see this is an issue. I'm going to stick it, move it just a bit inward. I don't like the twisting surfaces, so you can see here it's kind of twisting. Basically this one is further out, and yeah, let's just fix that actually. How can we fix it? Maybe by moving this one out here, and let's dissolve this loop. And dissolving loop is a very important thing. You need to make sure that you're familiar with this function, and don't be scared of using it, because it's a lot easier to edit surfaces whenever you don't have that many geometry on it, that much geometry. So I kind of just want to get a nice curve. Let's see with a zebra matcap. In Blender they're not that great. You can see that they always have this little bend on them, so I'm not the biggest fan, but maybe the red matcap will be our friend here. And in this case, I think the protective loop is causing some issues, some deformations. So I turned on auto merge, that way whenever I move vertices and they touch together, they merge automatically together. Now I'm remerging everything here. Don't worry about this. For now, it's not a problem. Yeah, okay. Much better, much cleaner. Now let's rebuild our sharp edge over here that we had, and rebuild our corner. Let's change it back to studio. Okay, awesome. So now I want the protective loop. I'm adding a loop, I'm forcing it to follow the contour, the shape. And now I want to get back my sharp corner, so I'll delete this edge. That way I can add one loop here, fill in this face, and what's the best way? Yeah, I said we needed, actually, here's another function I'm going to add to my quick favorite, merge vertices at last. Okay, perfect. Now you can see. Great. Yeah, I forgot. No, that's not what I wanted. Sorry for that. Cycles for the rendering. I like to look at what my mesh looks like. And why are you... Yeah, perfect. Let's give it some kind of shiny material, so reduce the roughness. Give it some clear coat. Usually I'm using Blender Kit, but I just switched to Blender 4.2 and Blender Kit is not available yet. So this is why I'm kind of using this setup. Now here is the same problem we had beforehand, I think, right? I really don't like this shape. So what I'm gonna do, even though it might not look exactly like the reference, I'm just going to move this one in and then G-stretch. Okay, now we need to do the same thing for the other ones. Okay, let's merge that together and see what we can do to fix that issue. Maybe it's not really something we can fix in the sense that it's a 3D surface. It needs to be feasible. It's not like a drawing where we can cheat. So here I'm just kind of putting everything back straight. I know this isn't probably not very clear, but it's not really meant to be a tutorial either. It's more like me explaining what's going on in my mind as I go. So here I'm rebuilding this loop, merging at last. And here I forgot about that. I deleted this one by accident. I'm deleting this edge, that way I can GGC to prolongate it, and that way I'm sure that it's still going to be perfect. Okay, I think this is good for now. It's not really meant to be a client project either. It's not. It's just for fun to show you what you can do in Blender. So here I'm extruding the top and I'm going to add the loop just to tighten it a bit more and then move it out over there. Now, if you really don't like the amount of bend you have on the center surface, what I would recommend in this case is to use the crease. Let me turn off auto smooth, and then under item, you can go with the crease to make everything sharper. Okay, if this happens, you just need to select a bit more edges and then make a small transition. So basically, if I have a crease of 1 here, then I'm going to have a crease of, for example, 0.8, 0.6, 0.4, just to kind of make a transition a bit smoother. And what crease do? Look at the wireframe. The edges will move closer to this edge. It's kind of pulling the geometry closer. It's kind of the influence this edge has on the subdivision surface. In my case, I might use just a little bit, maybe like 0.2, 0.3. Okay. Okay, so at first I said that I wouldn't model kind of the bend here, part of my base mesh. But in this case, I think we can afford to do it simply because we already have quite a few loops. And also, if we want to kind of create this loop that follows all the outer edge, it's going to be very useful to include it as part of our base mesh. Because we could have created kind of a simple offset like this all around, but it doesn't give us as much control as if we do it inside of our base mesh. So what I'm going to do is select all the top edges here, GGC, just to give us a bit more length. And then what I'm going to do next is select this one at the top, and actually, because this surface is flat, you can slide this one in any point, in any position along this edge. It won't make a difference because it's flat. If it was kind of a curved surface, if you were trying to move it out, then you can see that the apex of the curve, kind of the highest point or the point that sticks out the most, will move. But because it's flat, it doesn't really matter. So I can use that to my advantage. So I'll just place it wherever I want the bend to start. So I'm going to select the top point and this one, and then in side view, doesn't really matter actually. I'll just press G stretch. Now I don't want to stretch them out on all axes. I only want to kind of have a straight line on the Y axis, and I don't want to deform on any other axis. So here I lock all of the axes except Y. And that way you can see we kept our curvature, but now they're on a nice clean line on this axis. These can stick out a bit more inside. And now, same principle, because it's a straight surface, I would not move those two though, because they're kind of the protective loops. They're kind of the edge loops. Yeah, no, they're not really edge loops, but they're on the edge of the shape we want to preserve. If I was to move those, you can see that the shape just goes away. So I'll just slide this one up, and don't worry too much about tightening it for now. We'll do that later on, even though it really bugs me and I really want to do it. Let's just pull that back in, selecting all the loops, all the vertices, sorry, except this one. Why? Because when I extrude, you can see that it will be ready to fit out. So, like I said, all the vertices, then inside view, extrude it until about there, until it kind of gives you the length you want, and then I'll just pull that inward over here. Let's just see. Basically, you just want to, whoops, that's not the tool I wanted. You just want to have a straight line for this. Perfect. Now, I made you add a bevel modifier in the beginning, and this is where it will be helpful. So let's just select the loop, add a bevel modifier. Perfect. Now we'll also need a loop. I'm adding it, and then press GGE. Just kind of retighten that corner, but for now, not needed. I'm just showing you what we'll need to do later on. And also that bevel actually might, I was about to say maybe we can make it sharpen this corner, but I don't think it's, yeah, I think it could be a good idea. Let's leave it for now. Maybe it's going to save us some loop. Now for the bottom, we'll need a round corner now, because we're including that bend in our shrink wrap, in our base mesh, sorry. So whenever I encounter difficulties in a particular area in one mesh, I just switch area. So basically here I was a bit hesitant as to, okay, what is the shape going to look like? What do I want to make with it? So let's just jump back to this side where we don't need to ask ourselves any questions. On this side it's a bit more particular. It seems to stick out a bit more. So let me just do the same thing that we did on the other side. So select everything except the top vertex over here, then move it quite far inward. Now let's fill that, and let's move this one back. Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to bevel it. So if you don't find the bevel, it's under item, then bevel weight, just above the crease. Perfect. Nice. And on the reference, you can see that it will kind of have a small dip like this, but this is something that we can cut very easily once we have the shrink wrap modifier kind of applied and turned on. So I'm just going to save that for later. Okay. However, you can see that, yeah, it has a bend over here. I'm not sure if it really affects. Okay, what was I saying? I just took a little break here. I'm not sure where I was, but what we'll need to do to kind of round off this section is we'll need to add a loop that will, yes, go all the way across over here. And this will allow us to select the bottom two vertices, G twice, then C, and then this one, oops, let's just pull it back in just a little bit. Now we'll need to connect it to the rest. What we can do is obviously extrude those two, but the cleanest way I think will be to select this bottom edge here and extrude it all the way across, trying to make sure that the space between those stay quite even along the way. And now we'll need to move it on this axis as well. Okay, so we know this will be connected together. This will most likely look like that. Let me just tuck it back in. And what does it look like on the reference image? Okay, let me just add those two loops, so that way we can connect it to the rest, just like that. So this pinch is caused only by the bevel, so don't worry too much about it. So I'll just select that and then make the bevel much wider. And we'll need to also bevel that at a much smaller radius. And maybe we can even avoid to bevel those. This is where the wireframe view comes in handy, because now I can see that the loop now goes like this, which is perfect. This is exactly how it looks like on the reference image. So this is perfect. If I was to bevel this edge, then we would have a loop that goes like this, a loop that goes like this, and then one here. Let me show you. You'll see. So you can see that now there's no real flow anymore, which is fine sometimes, but in this case I want it to be super round. So let me even try to round it off a little bit more. Actually, let's just leave it like that. Okay, awesome. And yeah, this is normal that we have this little, although I don't like that. Let me just put it over. Perfect. Now we can even space those out. And I think my normals are flipped, so I'll just recalculate all of that. Nice. So you can see how we can model pretty quickly inside of Blender. And now, of course, this is kind of a very slow way of modeling, because I'm talking to you at the same time I am explaining my process and everything that's going inside my head. But obviously you can make it much faster on your own. So now I'm looking at it, and there seems to be kind of a weird bend in the shape. Okay. Let me just try to think how we're going to be making this one. Now this loop we don't really need. Actually we do, because it does create that rounded off edge. Huh. That's a little bit of a challenge, actually. Let's finish connecting the rest, because as I said, whenever you have a doubt, just change area. Just move on to the easiest part, and sometimes the problems will disappear on their own. So I'll just extrude all of those, then move them back in on the x-axis, and now the offset seems to go to kind of taper a bit. It starts very wide at this end, and then it becomes very narrow on the other end. So I'll just kind of slide those vertices inward just a little bit. Now this one, I'm not sure if I really like it. Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay, now we'll need to pull them back in, fill that, and then slide this one just to get back our shape that we needed. Now we'll need to round off this edge, like we said before. So I'll just slide that over here. And now you can see that we don't get a very nice rounding off, whatever you want to call it. So I'll just delete that face and add a loop in the middle. Now, I'm fine with doing it because I have very few loops around here and the surface is relatively straight. So as long as I don't really move it around here, I'll be fine. It won't kind of affect the surface quality too much. So I'll just add the loop here to make the corner a little bit better. What does this look like? Yeah, okay. Just need it to be much sharper. Here I'm using creases because I don't want to bevel. If I want to bevel something, I usually need to bevel the whole loop. And in this case, it would not look very good. So I'm just creasing it. And maybe the crease should stop around here, I believe. To get back our very nice shape that we had. Let's just crease it a little bit more in this area. And creases will never get you something as sharp as a bevel. And here it's a very this is a very sharp bevel. This was more of a metal one. But yeah, creases, that's about as far as you can go. You'll need geometry after that to support the crease, because of course creases don't create geometry, they just move it tighter. They move it closer together. And now, okay, so we have a loop that goes all the way around here and it dies there. So that's okay, but it creates some issues for our to deal with the edges. Now I don't need this loop around here. And because this will be kind of hidden, I'm really just going to make it disappear. So I'm going to merge it, turn auto merge on, then slide everything back over here. And because it's a flat area, I don't really care. It disappears without any problems. Maybe it doesn't. No, it was just hallucinating. Okay, so now we can connect that together, and now yeah, let's uncrease it. Let's set the crease to 0. Now we'll need to deal with that bevel. Yeah, this is fine. What if we actually, okay, let me remove it like I intended to do. Now what if we bevel up to here? Is there a way for us to, yeah, it's not gonna look good. Okay, so we need to find a solution for that, and in this case I think it might just be kind of let me check actually. So we want something to be sharp here, and we kind of want it to go in this direction. So I'm just going to create a little bridge over here, try to bevel my way out of it. Actually, I didn't think this would look the way it does. It's actually pretty good. Not gonna lie, this is actually quite good. What I wanted to do was just reroute the bevel away from this edge loop, but my initial plan was just to extrude that a bit further out and kind of get it to bevel over there. That was the initial intention, but I think I really like how this is. Doesn't seem to be causing issues either. Okay, nice. So we'll just accept this as it is, and now I'm not the biggest fan of kind of the curve that this has. It kind of seems to dip down a little bit. So I'll go back in edit mode and let's see if this is right. Now I want to straighten all of this, but only on the z-axis, okay? Just like we did the other time for this one, where we only unlocked one axis. In this case, it's going to be the same thing, but with the z-axis. That way it's going to flatten it without ruining the curvature that we have. So G-stretch, let's unlock this, and you can see that I lock those two together, and then G-stretch again. And let's do the same. Actually, with this, I think it's going to be better to just slide it closer. Okay, nice. I like that. This might be a little bit too close together now. So let me just put a bit of distance. And we can even slide it just like that. Just a little bit to kind of smoothen the surface. Okay, awesome. So we just need to tighten this area now, not like this, and then we'll be fine. So I'm going to delete that, because this gives me access to create a loop without it going all the way across over here, and without it causing too many issues. So we want to tighten this corner and this corner as well. Now in this case, sometimes you'll see maybe you can get away with beveling. Of course, not in this case. If, for example, I was to fill the area, you can see that bevel can be fine. Of course, might not be the best looking up close, but it can be a viable solution if you don't really want to spend too much time, or if you don't plan on going that close to your mesh. So here, let me add a loop on top here, and let's see what the best course of action is. So let's just slide that back over here, that way it's a bit straighter, it's going to look nicer. Same for this over here. Okay, perfect. Now if I add a loop over here, what does my edge flow looks like? Yeah, not the biggest fan of it. It's not too bad either. Now we'll need to move those upwards, because on the reference there shouldn't be any kind of apparent thickness in this region. So with my pivot selected, I'll just rotate that to tuck it in, and then I'll... Actually, scaling was not the best idea. Let me move it, just like that. Okay, I like that. This is good. Let's just slide those a bit further apart. Actually, I preferred the tight corner in this area as well. So that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, awesome. This looks great. Awesome. Yeah, this looks really nice. Quite happy with how this looks. And this is just the base mesh. So we'll need to add the details now. And yeah, I think I'm ready to move on to the base mesh. I'll just check a few things over here. Now this still bugs me to kind of create the effect that I wanted, where it kind of went inwards, but I'm not really sure it's worth it for this video. But let's just try it out. So I'm just adding a loop to give me a bit more space to work on, a bit more geometry to work with, sorry. Now I think what I'm gonna try is to just bevel that. And what if we then merge it back over here? And then you go here. And what do I do with you? Yeah, let's make you disappear. Okay, now, yeah, perfect. Okay, so I just looked at the reference again, and it seems to be kind of a broken corner. So I'm just connecting those two together. That way I can delete this vert, slide this one to create the corner I wanted, and then we just need to connect it back with the rest. Now, this is disgusting. Let's just it like this instead. And now we need to take care of this. Let's go in front view. Let's try to slide that in. Now here you can see I'm just sliding it really quickly along edges, sometimes multiple edges. So let me just do that, do this, and then maybe we can try to make those straight, but only on the y-axis. Oops, just like that. Okay. Yeah, that was a bit easier than I expected. And I think we don't need this loop anymore. Okay, perfect. How does it... Okay, so on the real part, it seems to kind of taper off along this surface, along this edge. Kind of like this, I guess. Yeah, they make it flow all the way down, and I guess we can do that, but I'm gonna see how it looks, just like this. I'm not really trying to replicate what they did here. I just want the kind of the same features to show you how I would model them, but I'm not really trying to lose time modeling exactly the right proportions, exactly the same in the same spot and the way they did. So we may need, yeah, we still need that one to create our sharp corner, and this is a quad, so we can try it out. So here I'm just filling the area really quickly. You don't really need to get all the little details around that. Doesn't really matter. Let me try to kind of fix this corner by beveling it over here. Let's try to reduce bevel size maybe, or no, okay. It's not liking this, okay. Let me instead drive it down at the bottom. I think this could work. Let's just add loop over here. I deleted this face to give me access to this corner, to this region. That way I can just take that vert and slide it up to the point where I want it. And now normally it's tapering off like that. Let's take that back, slide it up to relax the surface. And now, okay, what do you want, sir? Let me just take that whole loop. I'm not sure how it's going to react if I bevel it when it gets to this part. Let's see, make it very wide bevel. Okay, nice. Now we'll just need to sharpen that corner, and actually I think I can just use that geometry to slide it over here. Let's see if it seems to pinch the surface. Doesn't seem to be causing too many issues, but I'm not the biggest fan of that idea. Doesn't need to be as tight here. I just really want the corner to be tight. So I'm going to slide that in, and now that we have a bit more geometry, we can try to crease. Whenever you have a loop that goes kind of, that follows the edge over here, and you want to crease it, you need to select those two together. Because as you can see, if I select only the inside, it's going to create that. Well, if I select everything, then you can see it's much better. And now it's important to know that creases can cause issues once you go back to your final panel, because they don't have as much geometry. And this was a weird one, I'm not sure. Was it just yeah, okay. Let's select that. Actually, that triangle might be really useful. So I'm going to space that out a little bit more evenly, just like that, just for the, so that the god of topology are happy. Now I'll select this. Let's see if we can crease it. No, we'll need a bit more geometry. If I add loop here, might be fine, but it's going to destroy the curvature. So let's, oops, sorry, let's destroy this face and create a triangle, just like we did. Maybe we can get away with by merging it over here. Actually, nope. We saw what it did. So I'm just refilling that area. Perfect. Okay. I'm happy with this. It's not perfect, but it should do the trick for you to kind of learn a little bit today. And maybe follow along at some point. Now, maybe we need to round this off. I don't know. Not really sure what to do with this bevel. Let's see how we can make it disappear. Now, whenever you have bevels, you can just manage to make them disappear in some relatively flat spots. Here you can see that it makes a blemish, so it's not good. Let's see how it should disappear into the surface. So I think in this situation, the best way will be to unbevel it and try to use creases. Because creases, we have more control over them. We can pick when they disappear. We can space them out a lot more than bevels. So in this area, I don't even need any kind of pinching. I don't want anything at all. Let's create that. I'm not the biggest fan of huge triangles like these. They're super long. Maybe we can just try to make it blend into the surface. Like that. And for this, let's see if we can dissolve that, or we need... Yeah, it's better if we dissolve it. Because sometimes you will find that having triangles is actually helpful, but in this case, it's not. Okay, so now let's just call it done for this base mesh. And let's move on to the real details. The fun parts, where all the tricky stuff is done. So I'll just jump inside you, don't need to do that. Let's just rename that base mesh and then duplicate that, call that panels. Okay, selecting the base mesh, jump the subdivision to 4, actually let's go to 5, hide your solidify. For the panels, select your target to be the base mesh. This is perfect. Okay, now we can hide the base mesh in both render and in viewport. And now let me create a vertex group. So here, let's call it wrap. And so right now, if I change it to wrap, and let's see, yeah, I assign everything to it. That way everything is wrapped onto it. And if I was to, for example, remove those, now I can I can edit them, and you can see that if I apply them to the vertex group, they're getting reprojected. Okay, nice. Now we can start cutting. Yeah, true. It had a little dip over here. Now, I like to start with the easy parts. We said that there was going to be a cut that looks about like this. Let me just inset and press B to not have any faces on the border. And let me just try to tighten those corners with creases. Okay, awesome. See, that was really easy to do, but nothing we couldn't have done without the base mesh, of course. So now let's move on to the real magic. So we will have a loop. Let me just use the knife, and I think it's V that I need to press. Now the cut starts around here. It goes about in the middle, and you can see that I really don't care about the topology in this phase. Okay, and this is important. You don't want to care about it at this point. You want to care about the shape. Here it seems to go, oopsie. I just want to have it cut about at this line over here. Okay, so very easy, yeah, very easy, but what I meant to say was very ugly, very ugly cut. But now we can just merge that. That was an easy one. And now I'm just going to select everything on this side of the cut. Yeah, that looks about right. Let's see if we forgot anything. Okay, no. And let's just separate it into a new panel. Okay, now if I go back into side view, yeah, those faces were supposed to stay on the other side. So I'm just going to separate them, merge them into the new mesh, into the old mesh, sorry, and then merge vertices by distance, and everything is merged perfectly back together. Awesome. Now we need to take care of this. First, what I want to do is add a loop over here, because I will want a loop that will go over here. I want it to follow the edge. This will serve not only as a protective loop, but I also want to kind of create the offset to get a little part here, an indent along this edge, and this will be very useful in this case. So okay, so I can add a loop over here, and let's just merge those together, make sure auto smooth is turned on. Okay, whoopsie, you can see that this one was about to be forgotten. Okay, now this we don't need. I'm adding a loop over here, and then triangles, delete only the face, and here it doesn't go all the way across because we have an end gun over there. That's not an issue. Let's add a loop here. I don't care about the surface because now it's getting projected onto my base mesh, and so I can do whatever I want with this topology. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I should not forget to apply everything. Now I should be able to do whatever I want, and the surface won't be affected. Okay. Is this corner sharp enough? Let's see. If we need more sharp, we can always add more geometry. How do we deal with this one? I guess it's the same thing, really. Now this is an end gun. I don't like end guns. Let me just merge that in over here. And in that case, I'm not really sure. What's the best way to proceed here? Let's just dissolve this face over here, add a loop where it's easy to do so. Whenever in doubt, just make what is easy. So I just add a loop, merge everything except this one. This allows me to, yeah, in this case, no, it's not. Yeah, in this case, I can slide it over here and it's not going to ruin the geometry or the shape because it's shrink wrapped. But if you were not using a base mesh and you did what I just did, you would get an horrible surface now, and that's not really what you want. So now I can add that loop that I desired not so long ago. Slide that back over here and delete that edge. This allows me to add one over here, and let's just this to merge at last. And you can see how the quick favorite menu really speeds up the workflow. Now I can dissolve this this vertex because it wasn't really serving any purpose. Here, let me just delete the face over here. Let's just move that back over there. Okay, awesome. This, and this, I'm not really sure what to do. Okay, yeah, it serves to tighten that. So let's add a bit of geometry. Those here. Perfect. Okay, awesome. And now we need a little bit more geometry around here. And you can see that our loop, we have one loop over here to create our corner. I was about to say that didn't really match it, but I was wrong. Okay, awesome. Perfect. But now you can see, this is annoying. Okay, now we got pretty even panels. What I want to do, however, first we need to make this really sharp. And when I say really sharp, I mean really sharp. What is the best scenario in this case? I think it's just to create it. I don't want to create a triangle directly in this loop, because that way it would kind of break the loop. So by adding it here and just moving it really close to each other, make sure auto smooth is turned off, because sometimes you will merge your vertices by accident. And now you can use the crease to further pinch them together. In this case, it's okay. And now over here it seems fine. I'm trying to figure out if I got the shape correct or if we need to edit it a little bit. And I think this could be. So I'm just going to slide that back in. Okay, now we need to create a true panel gap. So I'll just add a loop over here to create some distance. Bam. Perfect. And actually in this case, let me select all of those, create a second vertex group. This will be created called offset. Perfect. Because if you look at the reference around the top, it seems to kind of go under. Probably because it clips to the other panel or something like that. I'm going to duplicate the shrink wrap, change the vertex group to offset, set it to outside surface, and then go with like a -5 millimeters. And now, what is? Okay, perfect. So you can see only this loop is affected by the offset. And yeah, beveling can work, but that's not really the best. Crease actually works fine in this case. And yeah, it creates this really nice little offset that's perfectly 5 millimeters. So very precise, almost CAD-like. But not really, but you know, you get what I mean. Precise. Okay, now let's create this cut, this kind of handle that it has over here. And it seems to go about here. And now, shall we delete it? Shall we delete those? I think so, yeah. I think it's going to be the best idea. And now I'm going to delete this edge, simply because I can create a quad with it, just like that. And now we just need to tighten this corner over here. And we will need a loop that runs along the handle. Let me just do that real quick. So I'll just select those two, extrude them without a care in the world, because we have a base mesh. So extruded, and then connected to the rest. Awesome. Now let's delete that. This allows me to sharpen my corner in piece. I'll do the same with you. Awesome. Perfect. Okay, now also what I want to do is move that over here, and you... What are you? Okay, awesome. I just wanted to create a little bit of a difference in the offset, because you will see all around the handle, it will be offsetted inward. And actually, maybe this one shouldn't. Yeah, it needs to be. It needs to be offsetted. Yeah, this is a quad. It's not a pretty quad, but we don't really care about the topology. We don't really care too much about the topology, at least. I care a little. I just wanted to handle this loop over here. This allows me to add one over there. Loop, and filling the area. Let's add a loop at the top. And let's connect those together. This one here, this one here. And now a little tip, whenever you can connect those two together, you can just slide them back together. that wasn't a very clear tip. I must agree with you there. But I think you get the point. Okay, now, why are you not sharp? Simply because we need more geometry, I guess. Yeah, more geometry is often the solution. Which is not a good mindset in video games, I guess. But for renderings, realism, and design, perfectly fine, we don't care. So, auto merge back on. Awesome. And you can see that even with all the bad topology and all the bad loops that we created, all the surface manipulation, like I'm doing here, our surface quality has not changed a little bit. It's still just as good as on our base mesh. And so, this is really something that's important. Your final mesh will only be as good as your base mesh. So make sure that you do that base mesh correctly. Let me just G-stretch that. Just to get an even offset all around. And except in this area, because I said I wanted it to be wider, just like the reference images. And this one like this, and then G-stretch, and then you G-stretch as well. And actually it might have been a bit too much, because it should be kind of parallel to this line. That's just... okay, awesome. Yeah, that's good enough for this tutorial. Okay, now, and to create the inside of the handle, what I'm going to do is... that's an interesting problem. I think in real life it seems to be part of this panel. So we would need to kind of go over here and select those edges, extrude them, remove them from the shrink wrapping. That way we can create the inside of the handle. Just like that. Here I would slide this one down just to allow me to create a new face over here. G-stretch, just to straighten that a little bit. And in this case, maybe this one was not really needed. And what about you? Were you needed? Not really, right? Okay. I'm realizing that I'm starting to go insane and talking a bit too much to myself. Let's pretend it's only for the tutorial. So I'll just extrude that over here. And yeah, okay. Now this one, not the biggest fan of the transition that it created. Let's see if we can get away with beveling all of that. Just because it's not very visible, I don't really care that much about it. Yeah, it needs to go down. And then I'll just slide you over here. And what if I didn't connect it all the way to the top? Let's disconnect this end as well. Add that here. Because yeah, there's no way that it could connect all the way to the top, simply because it has a plastic thickness on the other panel as well. Let's remove bevel from this. Yeah, didn't really make a big difference over here. Let's remove the crease, add bevel. Okay, awesome. That's just, oopsie. Slide that back. Bevel or not bevel? I think bevel is fine in this case. Let's just slide that over here. And here I kind of like the look of no bevel on this here. It kind of creates this rounded edge over there. However, I think we should remove it from here and maybe even from here. No, only from the one at the top. Nice, very nice. And you can see that this is kind of a combined arms method in the sense that we use both the shrink wrap and for some areas, and we remove the shrink wrap for some other areas. Because if you didn't understand, all the new faces we created here are not projected onto the base mesh, and this allows us to kind of create more complex parts inside of others. And I could have added geometry all around here to edit my handle, but it wouldn't have affected the surface quality on this part, basically. Awesome. Now for the little dimple, I'm not really sure. Actually, it's just a screw hole. These are just so easy to make. You just need to pick a spot where you want it to be. In my case, I want it to be around here. And yeah, let's just inset it. Loop tool. And actually, oopsie, let's add some geometry, of course. Just because that way, when I press loop tool, circle, it's going to be better. Here I change my pivot point back to bounding box center, and that way I can... It has a tiny offset. Do I want to go through the trouble? Wait. Okay. Do I want to go through the trouble of creating this offset? Yes. I want the same modifiers as this one. Yeah, okay. Let's create a vertex group called offset. Perfect. And now assign this to offset and then delete it. And now you can see it's very, very soft. And bevel will solve the issue. Maybe just increase a little bit. Awesome. And now if you want to go a step further and, for example, do the inside, then simply remove them from both vertex group. Here it might be a little bit trickier because of the offset. Let's see. What if we remove that from the wrap? Yeah, it gets us a little bit closer. In this case, why don't we just do that and then scale it up? Okay, perfect. I'm fine with this. And then bevel the bottom. So then you just need to add your screw inside of this. Do we need anything else in this case? Actually, I just saw on the reference image, it didn't seem to kind of go through. Here it seemed to be a bit... There seems to be a hole on this side. Now, I don't really like the shape that this created. Let's see if we can arrange that. And the loop, get it really close. And just refill the area. Awesome. So yeah, I think that's it. This is how you create... Actually, no. I just saw a little something over here. Here. There shouldn't be anything on this side. It should be these vertices. Yeah, we'll just need to re-add our bevel. This is something I don't like about Blender, is whenever you extrude kind of many vertices or many edges, and one of them should logically continue the bevel, Blender doesn't really add it. You need to add it back yourself. It's fine, it's nothing big. And here, Just need to add it back, like I said. And yeah, let's just bevel that over here. Awesome. Yeah, that's it. Maybe here we could now here, for the sake of this video, I'm not gonna spend time fixing all of these tiny little issues. Actually, maybe. Okay, let's say this is good enough. But yeah, this is how I would create a panel like that. And now you repeat the process for most of them, and you'll be done in no time with the perfectly modeled motorcycle or car or whatever you want to model. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.